7. This meeting is called to order in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Home News Tribune, Star Ledger, and the Highland Park Planet on January 4th, 2023, and was posted on the Borough website at www.hpborough.com and on the bulletin board of Borough Hall at 221 South 5th Avenue, Highland Park, New Jersey, and has remained continuously posted as required by law. Fire exits are to my left and right of the council chambers. Please speak into the microphone if you come up to make comments. As mayor, I preside over the council meeting and may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement or participation in the meeting if the participant's statement does not adhere to the 3 minutes provided to each participant for public comments, or if the statement is disruptive to the orderly conduct of this public meeting, is disruptive or not on the topic that is relevant to the borough governing body. Mr. Williams, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Foster.
Yes.
Councilwoman Canavero. Councilman George. Councilman Hale.
Here.
Council President Hirsch.
Here.
Councilwoman Kim Chohan.
Here.
Special Counsel.
Here.
Borough Administrator.
Here. Okay. Now we're going to move to a discussion item, which is an update on Track C.
Mayor, Council. So tonight we're just going to give a relatively brief update on our efforts on Track C. So you may recall when we went out for an RFP, in order to encourage the most creative opportunities for Highland Park to move forward on a redevelopment project, we asked the developers to not only consider the parcels that we were including in the RFP that were controlled and owned by the borough, but we also asked them to think outside the box and perhaps adjoining parcels might make sense in a redevelopment project. We did caveat that with the continuing position that we were not prepared to use condemnation. It's not available to us, but to the extent that they could reach agreements with adjacent property owners and present us with a better project, we thought that would be helpful. So we did conditionally select Garden Homes. Brent Tansman's the point person on that project. And they have been working to acquire adjacent parcels in order to present us with a better redevelopment project for our consideration. And that process is ongoing. But in order to take the next step, certain of those parcels are not currently in our designated redevelopment area from 2005 or in 2021. So we would have to expand the redevelopment area for this particular project. The first step of that is, as you recall, is to go to the planning board and ask them to study the parcels. So at our next meeting, council meeting, there will be a resolution for your consideration to expand, to study an additional 7 parcels in block 2202, which is the block, again, to remind everybody, bordered by Raritan Avenue, South 2nd and South 3rd. So that's the area we're talking about. The parcels that were not in either the 2005 or 2021 plan are blocks 1 and 31. So if you're on South 2nd, at the corner of South 2nd and Raritan, there's 2 parcels that are adjacent to the church. Those are the first 2 parcels that we would you would ask the planning board if you agree to study. And then walking all the way across to the other side of the block, there's 3 parcels, 37, 38, 39. They're also parcels that are not really currently anticipated necessarily to be in the project, but it feels like we should consider designating the entire front of Raritan Avenue. So while those parcels, the developer hasn't really moved with the property owners to acquire those, we do think there's value in expanding that area just in case, depending on what happens over there. You'll recall that's adjacent to our, current location for our plaza. And then there's an additional two parcels that they have had some conversations, I think, with the property owners, and that's, if now we're back on the rear entrance into that parking lot, not Raritan Avenue, the other side of the block, there's a parcel that's immediately adjacent to that driveway. It's lot 9. So if you're looking at that driveway to your right, we would add that lot. It's lot 19. And then off of South 3rd Avenue, there's a very long block that reaches all the way to our property. That would be another one we would ask you to consider. So the update for this meeting and for this discussion is there will be a resolution at your next meeting asking you to consider asking the planning board to study these additional 7 lots as we described, and we'll have a further discussion at that time. But we wanted to give you a heads up on that as it relates to Track C. We do feel like this, the effort by this developer to take advantage of our suggestion in the RFP to think beyond the few parcels is absolutely going to move us to a much better result as we continue to negotiate with them on the project. Unless these parcels are in the area, particular, for example, 1 and 31, the corner of South 2nd and Raritan, which I think would be a nice rounding off of the project. Unless some of those were put in the area, we wouldn't be able to reach an agreement for them. So this is sort of a preliminary step to have the official negotiation, but they have already expressed that they're speaking to several of these property owners. That's the update. Do you have questions?
I do have a question. On the 13, that's on South 3rd, that long lot right there, that would be
Yes.
acquired and put into where it goes 2202?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would be an attachment.
Can I
Yeah.
add to that? Sorry, Mayor. The thought there initially is potentially the rear yard, because it is such a deep yard. And the developer has been talking to the property owner, who's very familiar with the project. May or may not happen. It also could provide potentially additional access to the rear of the project. Even if the backyard doesn't work out, maybe an easement might. So the idea is to provide additional ways in and out of the site. And similarly, that's
19.
the logic behind 19.
Okay.
It's better
Okay,
access,
access.
potentially parking, expanding the parking area.
Okay.
But those are obviously subject to successful negotiations with those property owners.
Thank you. Councilmember Hale?
Special Counsel Baumann, I wonder if you could just take a step back and explain for the council and the public just that the process is that the planning board goes and does a technical study of the area for as an area in need of redevelopment.
Correct.
If you could just sort of walk people through that so we know
Sure, yeah.
where we are in that process.
I keep thinking we're all pros at this because we've been through this rodeo several times. But so in every redevelopment process, step 1 is to put the property into a redevelopment area. That begins with the council asking the planning board, who has the expertise, to determine whether or not that particular property fits certain criteria as defined in the law. One of those, and in certain instances, which one or two of these lots may actually qualify, there is a category where the property itself may not qualify one of the criteria, but it's critical to the project itself. It's almost like the hole in the donut argument, that this hole or this corner, it might even apply, for example, to 1 and 31, where perhaps they wouldn't meet the criteria, but they were important for access to make the project better. So, but that whole analysis will be done by the planning board once we send it to there with the advice of their planner. They'll send us back a report that says whether they agree or disagree with whether they believe it qualifies or not under the redevelopment law into one of those criteria. And then with that fact-finding back to the council, we'll then designate it, officially put it into the redevelopment area. The last step of that, we would then have to expand the redevelopment plan, which doesn't cover those properties, to then cover those properties. that the plan that already exists in the area. So it's again, sort of like everything else we've done, multi-step, multi-hearings, presentations, council, planning board, back to the council, and then expansion of the plan, same back and forth that's going to happen. This is sort of a unique situation where we had our area designated, and then a developer comes to us with a better plan, and we say that makes sense to have the foundation for a better plan. I often describe this. I'll do this briefly here. Is the area is sort of like the piece of marble, and so here we're just trying to make the piece of marble a little better, so that within it the sculpture, the monument or the sculpting that happens, the actual project can be better with a bigger block of marble.
Thank you very much. That's all I got.
Any other questions, council members?
Just one other point I'd like to mention while we're just talking an update. Couldn't believe it when I was talking with Joe earlier that the agreement was signed in August, so we'll likely need to extend the conditional redeveloper agreement, and we'll be back to you with the process on that as well. But that came up in a conversation I had with a council member, and I just wanted you to know we will follow up on that, and we can extend.
Well, I think we'll just put a resolution on the next meeting to give them another 6 months would be our recommendation.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adopt or reject Resolution 2303-01, Executive Session, Developer Negotiation Track A, Developer Negotiations Track...
Point of order, should
Mayor,
we
I'm
do
sorry.
public comment before we go into executive session? Is that?
This is not authorizing us to go into, we're not going into exec session. This is just authorizing us to go into exec session at adjournment of the open session.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So moved. I support the resolution to go into executive session.
So moved.
Okay, so we have a
Second.
first, we have a second. And now we're going to move into the open...
We need a roll call.
roll call?
Councilman Hale,
Yes.
Council President Hirsch,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kim Cho Han.
Yes.
Okay. And now it's time for public comments. Each person has 3 minutes and may comment on any topic. The borough clerk will monitor the time and offer a 30-second warning. When indicated the 3 minutes has lapsed, the session will wrap up by 9 p.m. The borough clerk will monitor the time and indicate when the 3 minutes have lapsed. She will give a warning at 30 minutes remaining. Then there will be a hard stop at the 3-minute mark to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. As a reminder, I may interrupt, warn, terminate a participant's statement if it does not adhere to the 3 minutes provided, or if the statement is disruptive to the orderly conduct of public meeting, is disruptive or not on the topic that is relevant to the borough's governing body. Please announce your name and address for the record and speak into the microphone if you come up to comment. Thank you.
Peter Spool, 146 Graham Street. Sorry, I came in late. I just want to know which tract, if any, you were talking about when I walked in, or
C.
more than one?
Track C.
C.
Okay. And so the idea is there's a request by the prospective builder to expand the footprint.
I would call it more a evolution of a conversation between both of us, where both the borough and the developer concluded this would be a better path to expand it.
Mr. Spool, there are agendas at the front, just so you know, if you didn't get one.
Hello, Grzina Strolia, 24 Red Cliff 2C. Not that I am a fan of developing the parking lot until we have something, as big and as good and all that. But if we do develop that, has any thought been given to putting in a dingbat?
A what?
It's an architectural term. It's a building whose first floor is open so that the parking remains, and then there's apartments above it.
And it's called a dingbat?
It's called the ding. It was from the 1950s. The developers used to put these like cute diamonds and stuff on the outside, and like wingdings.
Okay.
So they're really scientific, not scientific, architecturally in architecture schools are called dingbats. So, but I don't know if that's been considered. That
Terry?
way a parking issue
That's not contemplated in the redevelopment plan, and those are the parameters we're operating under by and large. I've never heard the term, so I'm definitely going to look into it. I'm sure there's some interesting examples
first
online.
floor.
But if you haven't had a chance, on the website, if you look at the redevelopment plan for tracks A to D, you'll see some general standards, and what you're describing isn't something we've necessarily looked at, but it's never too late to think about it. But we were trying to contemplate a complete street front, not kind of a parking lot street front, so that is a little different than what we were thinking
Right.
about.
We could always put like a wall facing Raritan, and then still have the parking behind it, so that solves the parking for voting and.
Parking is
know.
part of what we're solving for with the redevelopers, so we understand the need to have parking.
Oh, all right. Well, just putting in my 2 cents.
Learn something. I'm going to look up what a dingbat is.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I've only ever been called that.
It's the good dingbat.
It's the good dingbat.
Oh, that's a good dingbat.
Parking.
I'm just being called a parking. Exactly.
Any further public comment?
Thanks, Zoom to the moon.
Please announce yourself.
Yes, good evening. I'm Charlie Cradaville, New Brunswick Today, editor of New Brunswick Today. I'm following up on some discussion I heard at prior meetings about having hybrid meetings, and I wanted to express my personal support for them, but also ask a question. So you said at the meeting on January 17th, quote, currently there's only one town in New Jersey that's doing hybrid meetings. We're in conversation with them to see how that works. Can you please identify what town it is that you've been working with?
I have been working with a number of towns, but the one in particular I was speaking of at that time was South Plainfield. They do hybrid.
Okay, yeah, I just learned that myself, actually. And
I did some research on this.
Good, good. Well, then surely you know that there's actually 4 towns here in Middlesex County, at least 4, that currently have hybrid meeting options. South Plainfield, where you can use WebEx to join the meetings, but also I've spoken at Sayreville and Perth Amboy Council meetings on Zoom, and I called today to confirm that they still have that in place for their residents. And North Brunswick, I just spoke last night at a go-to meeting from my desk in New Brunswick to the North Brunswick Mayor and Council. And so I wanted to stress that it's not terribly difficult to accomplish this. Other towns right here in our county have. And I would encourage you to talk to more than just South Plainfield. I mean, I'm personally particular to Zoom, right? Zoom is the most popular software for this type of thing, so the most people have it. It has the least obstacles for people to participate. When you start to go to other systems, it's not as good. But I do want to stress that Highland Park can do this, should do this, and should do this promptly. I will say thank you to the folks who make it possible for me to at least watch your meetings from my desk in New Brunswick. I can't always make it out here, but I do very much think that Highland Park can be more on the cutting edge of access and public input, and an easy way to do that is to implement hybrid meetings so that people can participate remotely as well as in person. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Any other public comments? Great. At this time, I'm going to move to adjourn and move to executive session. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All-
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Good night.